Okay, guys, welcome back. We've had some amazing guests in the last few months and up to last year in the project management space. We had Priya Alavati, amazing project manager, told us all about her career. We also had Veronica White, and she told us all about her cohort on how to pass the PMP and how to get your start in project management. But we were missing one key component of this, the people that actually hire project managers. So I'm happy to introduce you guys to Jessica Grimm. She is a manager of, or she's director of technical project managers at RVO Health. So Jessica, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. I'm excited.
Yeah. So, as we were talking before the episode started, you can't really major in project management for tech projects in college. I don't believe you can, but how did you get your start here?
Yeah, so I actually had a first career in cancer research. So my degree is not in project management. It is in microbiology. I have a couple degrees in microbiology, and I work for Scripps in South Florida. One day I was going down I-95, spun across 5 lanes of Friday afternoon traffic. A van was coming straight at me. That they say that your life flashes before your eyes. Well, all the things I was never going to get to do flashed before my eyes. And thankfully, I finished spinning across 95, got the whole front and half back of my car taken out. But after that, everything that I aimed for was going toward sailing off into the Caribbean, which is what flashed in front of my eyes. 2 years later, my husband and I actually did sail the Caribbean for a year. But after that, I never went back to science. I stayed in tech. And so I went very quickly, realized that project management are skill sets that really translate very well between types of industries. And I did a lot of project management in science. I didn't quite realize that's what I was doing. But once I got into tech, I realized that is actually what I was doing. So I had a lot of those skill sets already under my belt.
Mhm. Okay. So, like, what were some of the transferable skills?
Yeah. So being able to understand what is the goal? How are we going to get to the goal? How are we going to break this work down into milestones? How do you make sure your stakeholders know where you stand, whether you're in science or in tech, making sure that the people that you're working with and that are depending on your deliverables know, is there a risk? Are we going to make our deadline? What are what resources might we need that we don't have to meet that deadline? Those are all things that transfer very well between industries.
Okay, so where'd you get your start? And how did you get your first kind of gig in project management? Exactly.
That is a great question. I actually worked for a radiola company that was part of eBay at one point. And at that point, I actually went in as a QA rep. So I went into QA. I didn't last in QA for very long at all because everyone there very quickly realized that my skill set was in project management. And I just naturally stepped into the project management role and moved up really quickly. And then I went over to Red Ventures, probably the biggest company that you've never heard of. Red Ventures has a lot of different verticals and assets, from health to travel to finance, many different industries, all within the same company. And then we spun off into a joint venture. So all of health that was part of RVO Health spun off into a joint venture with some of the Optum businesses, and we created RVO, Red Ventures Optum Health, which is where most of my most recent technical PMO build out has been at RVO Health.
Okay, and so did your prior science background, did that come up on the interview? Did that have any effect on you getting that job at all? What's up, guys? Hope you're enjoying the episode. Real quick, I just want to let you know we now have the Tech Career Accelerator for anyone that watches. We're going to get you a job via updating your LinkedIn, fixing your resume, running you through mock interviews, and I work with you until you get hired. So it is a 100% success rate. Check it out, link below. Thanks.
The initial QA job, it definitely came up. Transferring between industries like that is difficult. But what I had done was to start a web development company with my husband before we started our travel through the Caribbean while we were sailing. And I ran that for a couple of years and actually continued to run it for a little while after I was working in QA, and then moved into project management. And that opportunity that I created for myself as a small startup really gave me even more solid project management skills that then gave me something really good to put on my resume. And when they asked me about science, I could have a great translation point between the skills I built in science, how I applied it to having my own business in which I had to manage all the projects to create websites for small businesses, and then how I could apply that to the company, the rate at Radio.
Yeah. Okay. So QA, they realize you're pretty organized. You're kind of like a natural born leader, and so you switch over to project management. At what point do you kind of go up to the management level?
Yeah, so at Red Ventures, when I moved over to Red Ventures, I went in as a senior. And then, interestingly, something that is not on my resume is a very short stint at another company in 2020, because in 2020 I wanted to move and to be closer to family. A week before before COVID happened, I had asked to go fully remote, and we didn't support fully remote at the time at Red Ventures. So my manager said, I don't think we can do that." Right after that, literally 3 days after that, we all went fully remote.
Oh,
So I was at this other job for a very, very short amount of time, and then I came back, and that was when I came back, fully remote, and also higher up as a senior technical PM, and then very quickly moved to associate director and then director.
okay. So you think, kind of, so I see that a lot where people leave an organization and come back at a step up. Do you believe just had you stayed, you would have been naturally promoted, or it was that bounce out and bounce back in that was the most effective part?
Honestly, that bounce back in has been really effective for me, and I've also seen that from many of the people that I've interviewed as well. They've had very similar experiences, either in previous positions or in the position that they're interviewing for. Often, people come in and they're interviewing for like a senior role, and they were very entry level, mid before, or maybe they were senior interviewing for a director role. So skip level interviewing is not uncommon. It does provide opportunities for some interesting interviews, since growing a couple of levels in one move is fairly difficult. But you have questions that can help you parse that out. Sometimes people are ready for that level, and sometimes they're not.
Yeah. Well, I mean, from a manager's perspective, or kind of in a hiring capacity that you are, what do you? Why is that? Like, is it maybe people's true value to the organization isn't felt when they're in it, and then when they leave, it's like, oh, we could really use them back. Oh, but we have to bring them up at this level now. I mean, is that like what is it? Do you think?
I think some of it is honestly like budgets and politics around positions at the time. And like you said, sometimes it's because the needs are not quite realized. The company doesn't realize what that person is bringing until they're gone, and then the gaps are felt. So that definitely happens. I think sometimes too, in my case, I went back to a different part of the organization. So sometimes that lateral move is a little bit harder than you would think. Lateral moves within a company should be pretty easy, but sometimes it's hard for one part of the org to let that person go, or to provide that opportunity to move laterally between an organization. So I've also seen a lot of people that have been very successful and leaving for a short period and coming back into a different part of the org that they came from.
Yeah. I mean, do you ever, obviously, you have to manage egos in your position. Is it ever like a situation where you can't leapfrog someone that's been there longer? I mean, you can, but it will kind of upset the apple cart. But if they leave, you can bring them at a higher level, maybe.
Yeah, that that definitely happens. Skip leveling somebody that has been in the org for a while. One, skip leveling is just very, very hard if you stay within the same org anyway.
Mm.
It's very, most companies frown upon it quite a lot. I mean, they want to make sure that people have the experience that they need, that they've worked their way up through the positions, which is understandable. I think sometimes like you said, it does work a lot better when they leave, because they do is able to sweep a bit of the politics and, like you said, the egos aside some, especially if they change parts of the business.
Yeah, and then obviously finance has to sign off, and you see they see this same person. I mean, finance doesn't know the difference. They see the same person. Now you give them a $40,000 raise, and they're saying, well, "Wait a minute, we can't do this, right?"
As long as that P&L like you've got the budget, if you have the budget and you have the business need for that role, then it really doesn't matter if that person had been there before. As long as that the person was a high performer and had been doing their job and we wanted that person to come back.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about your journey at this point. I know a lot of PMs, obviously, my recruitment business, I place that are just, they kind of niche down in the project management space to a certain technology, certain industry, and then obviously command high hourly rates, kind of on their own, independent corporation type thing, LLC type thing. You could have gone that route. You went the management route. Why did you choose that?
I saw a lot of opportunity in the management route. A lot of companies do end up hiring. There's usually a stronger career trajectory in the people management route. If you want more solid, safe positions that can provide a longer contract or an FTE type position, a full time employee type position, but also deciding you want to be in people leadership is a very personal and very you have to know yourself well, and as you continue in your career and you mature in your experiences, you realize what you like and what you don't like. And the people management part of it, I usually love.
Yeah, except those couple cases, probably.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's always a case. And that's the thing about the people leadership side. If you decide to go into the people management, people leadership, you have to know that it's not always going to be easy. There are going to be some really, really hard situations. And sometimes it really challenges your values and you as a person and being able to navigate some of those things. There are times that you have to do things that you don't really agree with, but is best for the company. And sometimes you have to do things that are very hard messages to deliver. You just have to be ready for those things.
Yeah. So your title is Director Technical Project Management?
Yes.
Okay. So, but it's not Director of the PMO. Like, I mean, like, what is that difference? It's just kind of an organization. Is it a title? Like, do you guys just not call yourself a PMO, or would that be something totally separate from what you guys are doing at RVO?
That's such a great question. Some companies have very strong PMO cultures where the organization fully supports having project management roll up through a single leader. They have a single project management leader, maybe a VP of technical project management or of project management. And in that case, they usually have some very, very stringent standards in which you have to, for example, every single PM has to fill out the exact same report every Friday for this reason at this time to these stakeholders and everything. Most of the time, it's very standardized. For us, we try not to be too standardized. We try to maintain a level of self organization with our technical project managers. We actually are split up into several semi like smaller PMOs
Mhm.
so that we don't require everyone to work in the same way. It gives people the flexibility to use project management in a way that works best for them, but it also gives we have guidelines. We have standard guidelines that folks should work within. So not technically a standardized, centralized PMO.
Okay, so that would be the distinction for a different organization. Just everything is uniform, and you give people the ability to kind of mold it to their organizations within your company, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Often what you see is that there are very standardized PMOs within finance or maybe even pharma companies, ones that are highly regulated. We have some parts of our org are more regulated than others, and in which case we have to be much more strict about documentation and approvals and things like that. But in general, we try to provide our technical project managers with skill sets that they can kind of choose out of their basket. They have a very large basket of skill sets, and they know when to pull those skill sets out and why.
Okay, well, let's get into some of the must-have questions for an interview like this. You have a ton of certifications. Which ones do you have?
I have all of the Agile Alliance certifications. I have a PMI certification. And what I've found is that, yes, certifications can be very important, and, it needs to be very, very supported and backed up by your experience, depending on the level of role that you're applying for. But it also needs to be supported by personal and culture fit. So being able to take feedback, being curious, making sure that you come to the table with solutions, things like that are I have found are just as important as certifications.
Mhm. I mean, roughly, what are the costs of some of those?
It depends on which organization you are getting certifications through. Agile Alliance is typically more expensive, for example, than Scrum.org. And some of them have a higher cost of continued education. So some of them, Agile Alliance requires a fee every year to renew your certifications. You have to have your continuing education credits, and then you also need to pay for the recertifications. Scrum.org does not have that same level of stringency. You don't have to renew and pay for your certifications over and over. PMI is also similar to Agile Alliance, where you do need to pay for your certifications again and have continuing education.
Yeah. So in your experience, has that has the certification or lack of certification, like, let's just say it was very, very close. Does it put someone over the top, or does it just kinda get them to the table and then their interview speaks for themselves and they have to either sell themselves or not there?
Yeah, I think it's just as important for people to retain what they've learned and in their certifications and be able to apply it. And honestly, if somebody can has the skill sets needed for project and program management at the level that we need it, I'm more likely to lean on their experience than on a certification. Certifications help get your foot in the door for sure. And if you've passed the certification exam, it can speak to what level of skill sets you have. But you can also show that level of skill sets through examples in your interviews and by just your experience and your resume.
Okay. So from your perspective, experience trumps pretty much everything. Um,
It does. It's interesting sometimes in interviews when somebody has a lot of certifications. I see it quite often that people can have a lot of certifications, but then when you start asking about how to apply some of the skill sets, they can't really give you examples. They don't really understand how to use those skills that they've learned. And so being able to connect the dots between what did you learn from a course or a book or video, how do you actually use that?
mhm.
That's the most important thing.
If you've been interviewing someone and you feel like they kind of got the certifications to kind of cover up some maybe inconsistencies in the background or something, like they were kind of desperate, so they said, "Let me just throw a certification on there. Maybe that'll get me some more looks." Maybe.
It definitely happens. It definitely happens a lot, especially with some of the agile certifications that might not require quite as much effort to pass an exam. People tend to get the lower barrier to entry certifications and then hope to be able to lean on the certifications. However, a good interview should be able to parse that out. We do one of the things I like to do when I'm interviewing is ask some very simple, like basic questions, and then work my way up to find the kind of edge of their knowledge. Then I ask questions until they start to not really know the answer. Not only does that tell me what level of skill set do they have in a certain area of project management, it also tells me how do they manage not knowing the answer to something, which is a really important thing for, I feel like, anybody in an organization. You don't want that person that just makes up an answer if they don't know the answer.
Mhm.
And you want somebody that can say, I don't know, but then be proactive about getting the answer and communicating that.
Okay, so we're going to get into the interview part. So let's get into it. That's one thing you do. You like to kind of see if they will just get to the end of their knowledge and just kind of BS it a little bit. But how does it start? I mean, you start in basic just to hear them talk. Is it like what are you looking for in those initial questions?
Yeah, I think the initial questions, I really want to hear how do they talk about themselves? How do they pitch themselves? Do they what you'll find sometimes is that when you ask somebody like just tell me a little bit about yourself and your professional history. Why are you here? What are you interested in about this role? They will spend 25 minutes out of the 30 minutes telling a story about themselves or just saying telling me about themselves. And that's fine, but it also tells me as a pro- as a project manager, I need you to be brief, concise, and accurate. And if you spend 20 minutes, 25 minutes answering that question, then you're not the person for that role.
Mhm.
So it is very surprising the number of people that will spend a good portion of their interview time on that first question if it's a little bit vague. A project manager needs to be able to navigate ambiguity and situations like that where things are vague while keeping people on track.
Yeah, so that's pretty much the first test is to see how they you're not looking for, "I delivered this project." You're looking for how they answer it, basically, right?
Yes, just like it, similarly, if I'm in an interview for a project manager and they let me run over, then that is not a good sign. Sometimes they'll talk and talk and talk and they won't stop on time and I will have to cut them off. But if out of respect and showing that they have strong time management skills. It's if I'm talking, it's totally fine for them to say, I see that we're at time. I want to be respectful of your time. I'm happy to stay on if you have more questions. But otherwise, I want you to, I want to be respectful of your time. So seeing that response as well for a project manager is really important.
That might be counterintuitive to what some people might think, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. If I'm interviewing, I'm interviewing for a job, I tend to just like let them talk because I'm going to let them go over if they want to go over. But when you've been in leadership and project management, you realize that people tend to go over accidentally or they just weren't managing their own time well. And as a project manager, you need to help them manage their time well.
Mhm.
And so if that can come out at an interview, that's even better.
The first thing you're looking for, obviously they can summarize their experience into a nice tight window, then that's fantastic. You're looking for time awareness. I want to say time management because it technically is the interviewer going over, but you're just kind of like making them aware. So time awareness, I guess. What else? What are some other keys for people?
You know what's interesting? Years ago, I went to a speaker event and there was one speaker. I'll have to find the name so that you can put it in the notes. But the speaker talked about telling your story and that people don't remember what you say, they remember how you made them feel. And being able to tell a story about yourself, whether it's 30 seconds, 5 minutes, or 30 minutes, you need to have those elevator pitches that are a story that make the person feel like they know something important and interesting about you. That works really well. When I'm interviewing so many people for one position, it's hard to remember who is who. It was hard to remember my conversation with, person A versus person B. But when somebody comes to the table with an interesting personal story that ties back to their professional experience, it makes them stand out. And if you can make it touch their heart just a little bit, like, I had this like life-changing experience and it made me go into a different industry, then people are more likely to remember you, which means that you'll stand out a bit more in that interview pool.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, anything specific that stood out in a good way or a bad way? Like someone that looked great on paper and they started talking. Obviously, maybe they went too long, but anything specific that people will accidentally tell on themselves in some of these interviews. Anything you can think of, like, oh man, I thought this person was going to be great, then they shot themselves in the foot, trashing the old boss or something like that.
Yeah, I've definitely heard things like that where people talk about maybe a team that was difficult, and that's fine. I'm happy to hear about situations like that. What I'm listening for is what did you do about it? How did you approach it? What did you do to remediate the situation? And then how did you bring the team along for that ride? Like, I don't want to hear, I told them this is what we were going to do. And being able to navigate personal and team dynamic situations is way more important than just trying to make yourself look good. And that kind of leads me to one of the things that's really important for someone to be able to speak to in an interview is negative situations. What did you do? How did you handle it? There are a lot of questions that can kind of test how someone responds to difficult feedback, difficult situations, things like that.
Mhm. And so that's something I'm assuming you ask everyone because they're not going to have a career where every project went exactly on time and was delivered perfectly. Like no one has that. So you're going to ask them, they should come with some examples of where things went haywire and what they did, correct?
Where they went haywire, what they did, and what the result was. That is one of the most important things that they can speak to in an interview, and something that I see misses on, and especially in the more junior and mid-level roles, is what did your actions result in? Not just I did this thing, but what did you end up delivering? What ended up happening at the end of that situation?
Yeah. I mean, anything else that's like kind of something you like to harp on. Obviously, you're going to ask about the project details. I guess they should have that pretty tight as far as the story on, especially if it's a company that lines up well to your organization. They're going to have similar type projects that they're probably working on with you, and you're going to want to ask, okay, what happened there?
Right, but let me give a caveat there because sometimes people a lot of times, people spend so much time delving into the details of a project or a product or a feature that it doesn't leave time for us to really talk through like the challenges of the project. How did they respond? How did they build a system, a framework for the team to follow to deliver something on time? How do they communicate with stakeholders? I want to hear about their project and program management skills and their culture fit. I don't want to hear super details about a particular product they were delivering unless I have a very specific need that I'm looking for.
Yeah, and if you want to really if you want them to drill down, those are things you're going to ask. They don't have to like offer that stuff up, right?
Absolutely. And it's something that I'm unlikely to stop someone when I ask them about their project, like their management of the project or their experience. What I see is that if somebody continues into the details too much and they just keep going, I let them to see how do they manage this? How do they manage their time? How do they manage their communication style? If they're going super in the weeds and not kind of reading the room and knowing when to stop, that says a lot about the project management skill set as well. Something that we have to help our teams do: stay on track, stay concise but accurate. It's difficult.
Yeah. Well, let's anything else about the interviews before we move on to our last section?
I would say that that absolutely be prepared with with helpful questions about the role. You're not just I'm not just checking to see if you're good for us. You should be making sure that you want that role too. And this is your opportunity in the interviews. This is your opportunity to find out, is it a good fit for me? And so having questions, and not just having questions that ensure that it's a good fit for you, but also having interesting questions. What does a 30, 60, 90 day look like? Hey, as a person hiring, what is one way that you continue learning? What's a good book you've read recently? So questions like that can be really valuable. If somebody comes into an interview and they have no questions, red flag.
Mhm.
They're not curious, they haven't thought through, they haven't prepared. So have questions ready.
And I feel like it's kind of like it's like the last chance to sell yourself where maybe you didn't ask about something at a project or a company they worked at. They could even offer up, hey, at such and such, we did it this way. How do you guys approach that? It's just an extra way to now they just got some extra selling of themselves in there, right? From the question section.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a great point. I love that. And some of the best candidates that we've seen use approaches like that.
So let's talk about AI. I don't think at any time soon they're going to be replacing project managers between the everything we've talked about and the emotional intelligence aspect and the dealing with people aspect. I think they're pretty safe for a while. I mean, what do you think coming from someone like yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that project managers have a huge opportunity to leverage AI. Like we can do things faster, we can do things more efficiently, we can connect the dots better, more visibility. Like there's just so many things that we can do with it. But for now, and I think for years to come, there will always be that need for the role that builds the relationships. Building relationships is one of the biggest and most important things that project managers can do. And until AI is doing everything for us in software development, we'll always need people to build those relationships, to make connections, and yes, use AI to make you faster and better,
Yeah.
but you still have a job.
Why don't you expand on that? And is that something in 2025? You're going back to the interview part. Are you asking, "Hey, how are you using it? How should people be using it in project management?" And is that something else you ask? And that's probably something they should be prepared to answer now, right?
Definitely. And interestingly, we learn a lot from candidates when we ask questions like that. And recently, when we ask questions about AI, we usually come up with something new. Like we love tracking things down after an interview, and somebody tells us about a tool that they're using. So it's actually a really great opportunity for you to teach the interviewer about something that maybe they don't know about. We use AI, like Jira has AI built in now. Of course we use Chat GPT. We use it for creating project plans. We use Cassidy for creating bots so that we can ask questions around projects, project status, things like that. And we always love hearing about other tools that people are using.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great opportunity because if you offer up something new, they're gonna be like, "Oh, well, I didn't know you could do that." That just what a great way to move yourself up in the world a little bit on the interview.
I can tell you that being able to teach your interviewer something, even if it's something small, like just suggesting a tool or something like that, is a great way to make yourself stand apart. So having a story about yourself and having a little tidbit that your interviewer can take away, that will make them remember you.
Wow, anything else about before we go, I mean, like, give me something about the project management space, your thoughts, how would you get started nowadays?
Yeah. I think that having ends, like knowing people seems to be the one of the biggest ways to get your foot in the door. If you know somebody that can give you a reference, that is definitely a good way to get your foot in the door to get an interview. But to get into project management, like I said, there are so many different industries that have applicable and um, horizontal skill sets that you can move between industries. And by highlighting the skill sets that you have that are related to project management, even if you're coming from a different industry, I think that gives you opportunity to move around more so than some of our other roles. If you're a software engineer, the likelihood of you being able to move to a completely different industry, maybe becoming, a carpenter is probably not likely. But to be able to go from a scientist to a technical project manager, because those skill sets will translate so well. That's the beauty of a project manager. So many things in our life depend on being able to manage a project and being able to call those skills out. If you can do that, you can get your foot in the door and get into project management officially.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Anything else for us before we go? And we'll have Jessica's LinkedIn in the show notes so you can reach out to her if you have any other questions. But yeah, anything to take us home.
I say this is a wonderful podcast. I really appreciate you having me. The people that you've had on the podcast have been absolutely wonderful. We learned so much from this. So I really appreciate you having me. And this was really fun.
Yeah, no, I think this was a great insight because, it's great to have people expose the audience to different types of careers, but then we you got to get hired in those careers, and that's why I wanted to bring on someone like yourself to kind of go behind the curtain on how that actually happens. So this has been great.
Yeah, thanks so much, Chris.
Awesome, Jessica. Well, thanks again, and yeah, we'll catch you guys next time.